Hi everyone, Tom here. Today I'm doing a video that was a request. So someone requested I do a video, and I'm not doing exactly what she requested, but she asked for one on kind of doomsday prepping, and we're not going to do that. We are going to talk a little bit about preparedness, but when we think of doomsday prepping, we think of TV shows that are reality TV shows that are scripted, or we think about people who might be building a bunker under the ground and waiting for the end of the world. That's not what I do, and we're not going to talk about that. I do want to talk a little bit about just being prepared, because when you look at what could happen, there are some very common tragedies that occur, and being a little bit prepared for them will help you should you be unfortunate and have that happen. One thing that can happen is you could have a fire in a house or an apartment, and as far as preparedness for that, one thing you can do is take a picture of everything you own and save that in a cloud storage somewhere. You know, if you have clothing, you have appliances, cookware, electronics, everything you own, take a picture of it. That way, in case there is a fire and you have a total loss, you have some sort of record of what you did own to help resolve that situation. I've also talked to someone recently, and he stated that he didn't have any fire extinguishers in the house. You can get fire extinguishers pretty cheaply. Costco has some pretty big ones, relatively speaking, and you get a couple of those, your kitchen, your garage, your bedroom. I talked to someone who had one right under his bed, so if there was a fire, in the middle of the night, he could get up and he'd have a fire extinguisher to help evacuate. The other thing to think about with fire is, do you have an emergency bag? So if you did have to leave the house in 20 or 30 seconds, is there a bag you can grab in the garage? It has copies of some documents, some spare clothing. That way you're still in a lot of trouble, but you could be much worse if you didn't have any clothing and you didn't have copies of some financial documents and stuff. Those are things that you can do to help to mitigate some of the effects of a tragedy like that. The other thing is, it's pretty obvious, which is water. And in my town a couple of years ago, there was a water main break, and anyone who lived north of a particular intersection was at risk of not having water. You can get used 55-gallon drums that are food grade drums, and you can get them on Craigslist or various hardware stores that are independent hardware stores might sell them. You want ones that are maybe been used for fruit punch, or for, I think the one I have was soy sauce and xylitol, which is a sugar, and there was one for aloe vera gel. The aloe vera gel one still just, I can't get that smell out. But if you have a garage or a way to store them, they're about 440 pounds with water. You put a little bit of bleach in it, and then you can have a water source that can last you a little bit. 55 gallons won't go very far, but it'll go a lot farther than not having it. If you're in an apartment, you can get some jugs of water and strategically place them, throughout your apartment to balance the weight, and you would have a little bit of water in case something happened. As far as food, having 7 days of food or 30, or whatever you feel comfortable with, you can get food and rotate it. So if you were to buy, cans of soup, right? Instead of buying 3 cans of soup, buy 4, and then you can slowly build up, and that way you have some food just in case there's a disruption or you can't get out, like in Texas last year or early this year, right? We had the big cold spell, and so people weren't able to get out. They lost power. Many people had broken pipes. Someone at work was called by a neighbor because they saw water coming out her front door because she had evacuated, and then unfortunately the pipes broke. And people down the street from me, they just got back into their house in November, early this month, but they've been out ever since the storm because they had a pipe break, and then they got on the second floor, and then a lot of damage to the house, and then mold and stuff. So having a little bit of food and water is good. If you own a home, can you repair pipe? There are instructions on the internet on how to repair pipe. You can get some spare pipe, a torch, different pieces of flux and solder and be able to repair a pipe just in case something happens. Many people may not go this far, but if you're in an emergency situation like we had in Texas, all the plumbers were busy and you were waiting if you needed plumbing assistance. But there's even emergency tape, right? You can get this emergency tape that'll, depends upon how big the cut in your pipe is. You could wrap that and be okay for a week or two, right? It's not a permanent fix, but it can get you through an emergency. And I think the tape's relatively cheap, but and that's something that many of you could do if you had to, without having the plumbing experience. Another thing is a generator. It's some people may have solar, which is really great. I think solar, many people still don't have complicated systems. I don't have a solar system, and my roof is, well, my house was built in 2005, so the roof is 16 years old. It's going to be replaced at some point, and then when I do that, I'll consider solar then. But I don't want to go put a big solar system on my roof only to need to tear it down to replace the roof in that section. But you can get a generator for anywhere from $400 to $1,000 that can help you get through some of the harder storms. And it's not a permanent solution. There are permanent generators that cost about $4,000 to $5,000, but then you're going to need potentially to upgrade your gas service. You're going to need some professional installation, so the cost could potentially triple based on the cost of the generator. But a portable one you can get from starting, I think, maybe $400. You can go up to maybe $1,200. If you get one that can take propane, then you don't have to deal with storing a lot of gasoline, because these things can use a lot of fuel. But if you were to get a generator that allows dual fuel or tri-fuel, and propane is one of those fuels, then if you get 5 or 6 of those 20-pound tanks, then you're in a much better position. What I did with my house is I paid a little bit of money to have an electrician wire the panel up so I could plug my generator into the house, so I can power my whole house. Now the generator is not powerful enough for me to draw all the current that everything in the house would use, but I'd be able to shut different circuits off and be able to keep my heat on, be able to keep my refrigerator going, and a few things like that. It's not powerful enough to run an AC unit, but I have natural gas heat, so I would have a 120 volt 15 amp circuit for my furnaces, so I can run those independently and stay warm. Another thing is a first aid kit. We had a relative over last year, and my wife called and said, you need to pick up some first aid items. And I'm like, well, we have a couple first aid kits, but evidently he fell and he got cut pretty bad, so it was beyond what is in this typical first aid kit. So if you have a first aid kit, get one of those in your car, right? Because if you're in a car accident or you come across a car accident, you want to be able to treat any wound immediately as a first responder. So anyway, that's just a few things. I'm not the survival person to follow. I'm not really in this space, but there are podcasts on YouTube and on different podcast services like Apple, iTunes. The Survival podcast by Jack Spirko is one that you can listen to. It's really good, and it covers really common sense stuff. Again, it's not go buy 50,000 rounds of ammo and a bazooka because the end of the world's coming and you need that. It's more about, what happens if you lose power for 3 days? What happens if there's, a storm like we've had, right? Really common sense stuff. Anyway, let me know what you think, right? I haven't done a video in a while. It seems like a lot of the content on LinkedIn is now moving more towards people who've overcome personal challenges and really non-business related content. A lot of the stuff I've done before around talent and upskilling and training, it doesn't get the same views as many of these people who've overcome whatever challenges they've had in their life. And so anyway, I'll keep shooting videos though, because people are actually asking for them. So that's it for today. Thanks, bye.